Good morning. And good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Washington, D.C. We're so excited to be able to extend the audience today. I want before I begin, on behalf of Ron and Carrie, Al, David, and myself, to give a very special expression of love and appreciation to those of you who are participating with us today. It is an inexpressible honor to have you be a part of our lives, and we hope that you'll feel that over the next couple of days. I want to take you back through some of the part of our history that you might not be familiar with. I'm going to lay down 3 threads and try to weave them together in the next 28 minutes. So here we go. First, about 18 years ago, I got a brand new toothbrush. It was one of those electric ones that is about 180 horsepower, oscillates at 5 million times per second. And I was enjoying it immensely until one evening when, after using it, I exited the bathroom and I heard a voice calling out to me in a loving way that said, "Get back in here." I came back in and my wife was indicating the mirror, which had this beautiful kind of Kandinsky effect on it with spittle all over the place. She said, "Joseph, I've asked you before." She said, I've asked you just to wipe that down. She said, "You seem so attentive to the needs of other people, but when I ask you something, you seem not to pay attention." Well, I defended myself on technical grounds. I let her know that it was more about the device than my own bad motives, tried to teach her the 6-source model in the moment. She wasn't having any of it. She left in a huff, came back a couple minutes later and said, "All right, that probably wasn't the best way for me to bring it up. I'm sorry, but," she said, "I find it irritating that I have to remind you again and again and again for something as simple as this." Well, at that point, I was not having her apology. I thought that was inappropriately expressed. I deserved more remorse than what she was expressing at the time. So to make a long story somewhat shorter, this ends up lasting 48 hours, by the way. I decided that night to sleep on the couch. Now, I want you to know that I chose to sleep on the couch. I was doing this to advance her maturing as an adult. I thought that it would be an important life lesson for her. So I lay down there on the couch, kind of smugly thinking that the next morning I would get a well-deserved apology for some of the abuse that I had received the night before. Let's pause that one. December 28th, 2009 was probably the most crucial conversation of my life. I'll start 10 months earlier. 10 months earlier, I was at home on a Saturday and there was a knock at the door. When I opened the door, there was a kind of shaggy, worn-looking character standing there. After a couple minutes of staring at him, I recognized something about the eyes and finally clapped him on the shoulders, pulled him in, and I said, Patrick, I haven't seen you forever." I dragged him in and sat him down on a chair. Patrick had been one of my scouts about 10 years earlier. He had been part of our little scout group, and we become fast friends, and over a couple years camped together a lot, but after a while he stopped coming. I tried to seek him out, but he seemed to be avoiding me. Finally, one of his friends said, "I think Patrick is hanging out with kind of a rough crowd now, and I think he's into drugs." Well, that broke my heart. And I continued to try to find him, but finally gave up. So now it's 10 years later, and here he is on my doorstep. I sat him down and I said, "Patrick," I said, "tell me about what's going on." Well, he told me a story of woe that spanned a decade. Bad decisions, time in jail, time on the street, homelessness. He said, "But I've decided I want to turn my life around." And when I started thinking of those I knew that I could trust to help and guide me, he said, "You're the only one that came to mind. Everybody else, I think, is part of that other world that I want to leave." I said, "I'm so glad you would reach out to me." So we talked for a couple more hours. We created a plan. He'd get a job, he'd start repaying fines, and he'd try to turn his life around. About 3 months later, he was doing pretty well. He said, "You know what, I'm working a minimum wage job. There's this construction job that's a little farther away. If I could buy a car, I'd have transportation, I could do that." So I arranged to co-sign a loan for him. He got this old beater truck, and he began making payments on that, and things were going pretty well till about August of that year. And he disappeared, and it broke my heart. I tried looking for him, I tried calling his cell phone, I tried talking to common friends, and he was not responding at all. So I finally gave up. Now, I didn't connect the dots when in October of that year, my house was burglarized. And it worried me because I travel a lot, and so I worried about my family's safety in addition to just feeling violated at having somebody penetrate the sanctity of my home. So we went and got a very expensive surveillance system so that we could feel secure as I traveled a lot. It's hard to describe then how it felt in November of that year when our house was burglarized a second time, but this time we had video surveillance data. And as I looked back over that videotape, I saw Patrick enter our backyard, drop down into a window well, kick out one of the windows, and come out minutes later with some of our valuables. I sat there just breathless, watching this, feeling violated and angry, feeling sad and despair, feeling hopelessness for him. And what do you do? Well, I had no contact with him until December 28th of 2009. I was driving not far from our house, and I saw Patrick walking along the road. So I pulled the car over, I rolled down the window, and I said, "Hey, Patrick, hey, Patrick." The instant he recognized my voice, you could see his body tense, and he was about to spring and run. I said, "Patrick, it's okay. I just want to talk. I just want to talk." Third thread. Crucial Conversations for us was a happy accident. So it began like many of your lives in the back of a Volkswagen van. There were four of us, Al, Carrie, Ron, and myself, kind of talking and dreaming, and we came up with this idea that if we could help the world learn to change behavior, we could change the world, that would be a wonderful way of going about it. So we pulled together, we organized Vital Smarts, and that was 25 years ago last month. It's been a wonderful, wonderful quarter century, and you're an expression of the greatest joy that we have in that work, how many have joined what we think is one of the most important human problems we face. But as we started thinking about how to change the world by changing behavior, one of the questions became, what behavior, if changed, would make the biggest difference? So this is part of the story that's familiar to you. We began with that as the thesis question. Are there a few moments, are there some moments of disproportionate influence where if people behave differently, if you and I could help them pay attention to those brief ephemeral points in time, and help them just slightly modify how they showed up, that we could change their lives, that we could change organizations, that we could change the world? Well, as we began our research looking for those kinds of moments, you're familiar with this moment, but I want to have you play it out anyway. So grab a buddy, grab someone at your table, put your hand on them right now so that everybody knows who's with whom. Get a partner. You got a buddy? All right, very quickly, who's person A? Pick an A and a B. Person A. Person A, let's have a volunteer. Okay, person A, you're going to be Nurse Bonnie. You're the woman in the left. Person B, raise your hand. Person B, okay, you're going to be Dr. Scott. So what I want you to do is just get ourselves into the Crucial Conversations mode. We're going to play the scene out. As soon as the scene stops, those of you who are Nurse Bonnie, raise your hand again, Nurse Bonnie. That's good. It's half the room. You did it very well. It's a smart group, isn't it, Ron? So as soon as the video stops, those of you who are Nurse Bonnie, turn to Dr. Scott and just say the next sentence you would say. Here you go.
Can I get you to check in on Mr. Gonzalez before you take off? He's the older gentleman who had the punctured lung. We're hoping to release him.
I can't. I got to get to my son's music assembly. Just, I don't know, just tell him something came up and I'll come back tonight and check on him.
Actually, his family's all here expecting to take him home. I told him you were just down the hall. Please, it'll only take a minute.
You told him what?
I assumed it would be okay. I thought you'd be right in.
Oh, you
Get
thought?
ready.
And where did you learn to think? Certainly not some two-year rinky-dink nursing school, that's for sure.
All right, go. Where'd you learn to think? Turn and respond. Go. All right. Stop wherever you are. So we began very quickly to notice that there were moments like that of profound emotional complexity. But remember, that's not what we were interested in. So a lot of us that do Crucial Conversations training think that's why these deserve attention, because they're emotionally complex. No. That wasn't the thesis question. We wanted to change the world, not just help people feel more comfortable at moments that they're uncomfortable. So we asked, what is it about these moments? So first of all, we found these are moments where something really important to us is on the table. Second, these are moments where we expect others to disagree. And finally, those two come together to create this third condition. Now, I want to share some of the backstory because this has been not just an academic and experimental process for Ron, Carey, David, Al, and myself. It's been very much an action learning process. We've had the Crucial Conversations along the way. So a number of years back, Carrie and I were working on the chapter of a book, and we had a little process.